The time has just gone 8 minutes to 9 a.m. as we continue this morning, and it's a time of the week where we bring you the weekly edition of Crime Talk with eThekwini Secure. We're joined by the chairperson of eThekwini Secure this morning. We're talking with Imtiaz Syed. Imtiaz, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Nat?
Yes, Alhamdulillah, doing well. Imtiaz, 1 year since the unrest that had
Hmm.
engulfed KwaZulu Natal and also parts of Gauteng. And just going back, reflecting what had taken place a year ago. And we know that, since then, we've seen this entire commission of inquiry. We've seen what has basically happened. A lot of discussion has taken place to try and unpick what had actually happened and why things have happened. A year later, what are your thoughts?
When we, in hindsight, when we go back to it and we look at it, it was an utter time of madness, and we really can't really digest exactly what had transpired. And as much as we speak of all of these inquiries and what has really happened in terms of how do we move forward as a country, coming from these sorts of unrest and what had happened in last year, it brings back a realization that we are a very volatile country. I mean, since last week, and I was out in Malawi since last week, there were people calling or WhatsApping me asking, is there something happening? Even this morning, someone called and said, there's threats of this and threats of that. And we're living in such a climate where we are so abnormally desensitized towards uh, having an understanding that we can actually be normal, if that makes any sense. So when we're looking at it from the perspective of how we see it, is that we currently all living in fear, and we haven't done much to say that we are now stable. There is no clear sign that, what, guys, we are all okay. This isn't going to happen moving forward. That hasn't come to the fore. And that's a great, great cause for concern. And that gives us a lot of edginess when it comes down to investing, to reinvesting in our businesses, to starting to do things for the betterment of the country per se, and that's really problematic.
Well, we know that many people haven't even picked up the pieces. In fact, many people have just basically given up, and there are those who've been brave enough, obviously, to pick up the pieces and to carry on from
Yes,
where they were at this point in time. And also, we're still feeling the devastating effects of what had taken place last year. But also, one of the key issues that we need to talk about, and if we go by the Sri Lankan example on what has happened in Sri Lanka, where we're
yes,
talking about some of the triggers, and these triggers. Ah, yeah, last night I had quite a detailed discussion talking about some of the issues in Sri Lanka. We're talking about power cuts. We're talking about the high cost of living. We're talking about food insecurity. All these type of things, service delivery, that has been
yes,
another factor. Politicians. Now, all of that put together tell us that these are triggers. We know last year, obviously, it was about Jacob Zuma. It was about his imprisonment. But there have been other triggers as well that had contributed to that unrest. And this is something that still hasn't gone away. People are still concerned. They are still talking about the very same things that could possibly lead to a volatile situation.
anything at this time can be a trigger. And when we're speaking to it, there might be movements that are speaking to service delivery, which we're seeing daily now, especially in eThekwini with regard to the recent, and everyone puts it down to flood damage. But ultimately, how do we still be speaking about that with no proper plan in place in terms of us coming almost 100 days after the floods, and we still don't have a proper understanding and finality on a way forward in terms of plans? What are we planning to do, and what do we need? Basically, people really, really want is definitive answers to say, is the rights going to happen again? Right? The question, that very question by nature, if it cannot be answered, it puts us in a very volatile situation. Now, if government per se cannot give us that sense of security as a citizenry, where do we go to? Where do we live? How do we move ahead? How do we do anything in terms of saying that this is how we are? Now, giving you the Sri Lankan drama that's going on, right? Ultimately, they've invaded the president's house and they're doing all of these things. The problem with South Africa is that when we do things, or when the country per se does things to speak out against corruption, against service delivery, against all kinds of injustices, fuel prices, whatever it is you want to call it, we end up infringing on each other's rights. And that's problematic. Why is it that when we go out to protest or have some sort of show of force to say that we are unhappy with something government is doing, we go out and attack each other? That's a problem because we're attacking each other's businesses, we're attacking each other's lives, and then we can't grow together. We'll never grow together that way. So the risk we face is that these things always come up to the fore, and the interpretation of it is violence in our country, and that's a problem.
Well, I'm glad you actually raised this issue because it is the wrong people that are suffering the effects
Absolutely.
and the consequences. And yet, when it comes to putting your cross or putting your mark on the ballot paper, this is where it actually should matter, Imtiaz.
You see, this is the thing. When it comes down to that and you speak to it, I'm not sure whether we're going in a direction of political gangsterism, so to speak, where it's just automated that this is what we're going to do, or have we started as a generation of people, of thinkers, to say that, you know what, if something doesn't work, let's not do the same thing again. Let's bring change to that. And this is not mooting for votes. This is saying, let us bring the dynamic of everybody that can represent us together to have a clearer understanding and not put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. Because right now we're walking on eggshells in this country, and that's the reality of the climate.
Well, Imtiaz, unfortunately, time obviously is run out, but some say time flies. But I'm just looking at the clock behind you, stuck at 11:30. Time is stood still for you.
I absolutely like it that way.
Just, Jazakallah.
Okay.
And as I see behind you as well, it said, I'm talking about an awesome day. Have a wonderful
Yeah.
day, inshallah. And
You too.
inshallah, looking forward to next week. All the best to you.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Wa
barakatuh.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Imtiaz Syed joining us this morning, the chairperson of eThekwini Secure, which is now heading straight towards 9 a.m. We've got Zaid Jedwat, who is standing by shortly with the news.